Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today in this video, I'm going to be wrapping up all of the books that I read in the month of October 2020. I read so many books this month, both in my free time and for school. I read a total of 9 books and I also DNF'd one. That is for a total of 2,459 pages and an average star rating of 3.5. This is the most books I've read in a month ever, though it actually is not my highest page total because I think in July of this year I read more pages, even though I only read 8 books that month, not 9, just because some of the books that I read this month were fairly short. My ratings this month were also all over the place, so I'm really excited to talk to you guys about these books. Now, the first book I read in October, I'm not going to talk about for too long because it was a reread, and everyone who watches my videos regularly knows that this is my absolute favorite book, Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I gave this 5 stars, no surprise. This is my all-time favorite book, and I had to reread it at the end of September, beginning of October for a class that I'm taking at college, and I don't even think I need to discuss this book because it's my absolute favorite. I highly recommend it to anyone out there who hasn't read it, who is interested. I think one thing people don't realize about Jane Austen is how witty she is, and you can't take everything that's said in the book seriously. I personally laugh out loud sometimes when I'm reading Jane Austen because I think she is hilarious. And she also, you know, just wrote the greatest love story of all time. What else is there to say? This is a perfect book. It's always 5 stars for me. This was at least the 3rd time I've read it, possibly the 4th, I'm not sure, and it's my forever favorite. That's all that there is to it. Next was the book that I DNF'd this month, and I'm not going to talk about this for too long. It doesn't have a rating because obviously I didn't finish it, nor did I count the pages I did read in my page total. I DNF'd Captive Queen by Alison Weir. I've never read Alison Weir before, but I wrote a paper on Eleanor of Aquitaine last month, and I just generally think she's a really interesting historical figure, so I wanted to get a historical fiction book about her. Captive Queen is a historical fiction novel chronicling Eleanor's life and her marriage to Henry of England. The book begins when she is Queen of France. She meets Henry. They fall in lust at first sight. I don't think I can use the word love, and so they make plans for Eleanor to leave her husband Louis and marry Henry. However, very quickly, their relationship turned incredibly toxic and the sex scenes were cringeworthy. So after reading about 110 pages, I decided that I love myself too much to finish the book. I talked about this a bit in my intimidating TBR book tag, so I will link that down below if you want to see what I said in that video. Basically, you know, this book just was really cringe and I didn't want to finish it, so I didn't. Next, I think I will talk about the 3 books that I featured in my thriller reading vlog. I will link that down below if you want to go watch that video and see my full thoughts on these books. The first book that I read for that video was My Lovely Wife by Samantha Downing, and I ended up giving this book 5 stars. I just had so much fun reading it. My Lovely Wife follows our unnamed narrator and his wife, Millicent. They seem like your average, wealthy, suburban couple with their 2 kids, but our narrator and Millicent have a secret, and that is that they've kept the spark in their marriage alive by stalking and murdering women. I don't really think there's much more I can say about the book than that. I loved this book so much. I felt like our narration was just so, like, creepy, and I just had a huge amount of fun reading this book. There weren't any super shocking twists, but there were a bunch of mini wrinkles, we should say, that our narrator and Millicent faced because they're trying not to get caught with the murders they committed, and the ending was a bit shocking to me. So overall, I had a lot of fun with this. Was it a little far-fetched in some aspects? Maybe, but What you want from a thriller is you want to be entertained and you want to be surprised, as Books and Law always says, and this book did both for me, so it was 5 stars. I have no complaints. Next in that video, I read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. I read Final Girls by Riley Sager and The Last Time I Lied, also by him, both this year. Final Girls was only okay, and The Last Time I Lied I really loved. At the time, I only gave it 4 stars. In retrospect, I feel like it probably was a 5-star book for me because I've thought about how much I enjoyed it many times since then, but that's besides the point. Point is, I was really excited to read Lock Every Door, and ooh, unpopular opinion time. This was so disappointing. I gave it 3 stars at first, but after I thought about it more, I changed my rating to 2 stars. This book was probably the biggest disappointment so far this year, easily. Lock Every Door follows Jules, who gets a job apartment sitting at this very famous apartment building in New York called the Bartholomew. It's home to the rich and the famous, and it does have a history of bad things happening there, but Jules really needs money, so she's excited to get this apartment sitting gig. And then she meets Ingrid, another apartment sitter, who disappears one day out of the blue. And so Jules wants to find out what's really going on at the Bartholomew. I really was loving this book in the beginning. I was really engrossed. I wanted to know what was going to happen. I liked the gothic atmosphere. However, it all fell apart to me with the ending. I hated the ending. It literally made me angry. I was pissed off by the resolution to what was going on at the Bartholomew because I'm not going to spoil it in this video, but to me, it was so unbelievable. It was too much. Obviously, sometimes thrillers are a little bit far-fetched, but this was so far-fetched that I couldn't forgive it or forget. And I really don't understand how so many people loved this book because the ending, in my opinion, was so bad. I'm not trying to be patronizing when I say that. I would legitimately like to hear from people who read this book and loved it, and I would like to hear you guys in the comments explain to me why you liked this ending, because I thought it was awful. Main feelings I have about this book are anger and disappointment, and that's not good. Then I read one more book in that thriller video, which was marketed to me as a thriller, though I don't think it actually is one, and that was Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. I ended up giving this book 2.5 stars. There were some good things about it. However, this is not a thriller. It's marketed as such, but it's really a literary fiction, and even though there were good elements to this book, the plot was practically non-existent. The book was really boring. So this book follows a white New York couple, Amanda and Clay, who are renting a house in the Hamptons for a summer vacation with their 2 teenage children, Archie and Rose. And then one night, an elderly black couple named Ruth and GH show up at the house. They say they're the owners of this house and they have come back because mass blackouts are plaguing the East Coast and they don't know what is happening. So these 2 families are living together in this house. It's an exploration of racial tensions, which I thought was done exceptionally well in the book. However, there really is no plot to the story. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that these blackouts and end-of-the-world events that are happening are never explained. Even though Amanda and Clay don't trust Ruth and GH at first, and Ruth and GH don't fully trust them either, they kind of just keep that to themselves and sit around in the house together asking each other questions while keeping their mistrust below the surface and faking niceties. And the book ends so abruptly with really no resolution, and understandably, in real life, a lot of things don't have easy answers or resolution, but when you're reading a book, you want things to come together somewhat. I'm not saying that the author should have given us all the answers, but he didn't give us any, and so that was disappointing. I also did not like the writing style. I thought this book was incredibly overwritten. There were unnecessary descriptions that went on and on. This is a very short book, and if he cut out a lot of his unnecessary descriptions, it would be even shorter than it already is. Also, there was a lot of descriptions of bodily fluids and functions like sex, semen, poop, vomit. It was just too much, very off-putting. I don't want to read detailed scenes of a character masturbating. It's just too much. It's too much information, guys, seriously. And the writing came across as a little pompous to me. That's how I feel with most literary fiction books. I feel like the author, this is gonna sound really harsh, but the author in literary fictions, in my opinion, the authors try too hard to sound intelligent by over-describing everything and using as many big words as they can think of, which comes across to me as very annoying. I was thinking that this book was going to be a Get Out style thriller addressing racism in America, and while I do think that the depiction of Amanda and Clay and their subtle racism was very effective and I think accurate to people you would actually see in society, the plot of this book was non-existent. It was very slow, it was overwritten, and overall, I don't think you can call this a thriller because it was not thrilling. Next, we have some books that I read for school, and some of these were, again, rereads for me, so I will not say too much about them because I've talked about them on my channel before. So first, for my class on History of the British Isles, I had to read Richard III by William Shakespeare. I read this before, and previously I gave it 3 stars. However, upon my reread, I bumped up my rating to 4 stars. I am really interested in Richard III as a historical figure, and though he was definitely not a perfect person, I mean, pretty much everyone vying for the throne in this period of English history was not, by modern standards, a good person. I definitely think that his character has been assassinated and people have a perception of him that's not accurate, mostly because of this play and the way he's portrayed in here. However, when you take away the historical inaccuracy, this is a really good play. It has a lot of good ideas, and there are some scenes and pieces of dialogue that I really, really enjoy. So that's why I decided to give it 4 stars, because I do think it is extremely well written, and I can understand why it's so famous. Even if the historical inaccuracies do bother me, I understand. So those are my general thoughts on Richard III. I do have a very detailed Goodreads review that I will link in the description if you want to see some more specific thoughts and examples. Next, another reread that I had to do for school was To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. I read this for my senior seminar, the same class that I read Pride and Prejudice in. I actually haven't finished it yet. I have to go finish it after I film this video, but I've read this before, so I still feel comfortable talking about it, and I'm gonna go finish it after I finish this video. I gave this 3 stars last time I read it, and I am sticking with that 3 stars. This is not a bad book, but it's just not the book for me. It's not the kind of thing that I would read if it wasn't assigned to me. To the Lighthouse follows the Ramsay family and their friends and associates at their home in the Isle of Skye in Scotland. And why I don't love this book so much is it doesn't have a plot. Like I said with Leave the World Behind, there's not a lot of action going on in this book, so I personally am bored by it. Really, this is a much more psychological book where we jump into the heads of the various characters through free and direct discourse, and we see them having a lot of thoughts about life and death and what is their purpose in life. So it's just not something that I would read. I can't say this is a bad book because I don't think it is a bad book. I think it is well written. It's just personal preference. So it's not going to be the kind of book that I go for. It's not the kind of thing that I would read, but I'm sure there's lots of other people who would love this and who are more into this kind of thing. I'm just not that person, so I don't think there's much else to say about this. And the final book that I read for school, I also read this for my history class, I don't have that much to say about it, and that is Utopia by Sir Thomas More. I don't know why the college bookstore put the sticker right on the cover when they could have put it on the back, but that's fine. I gave this 3 stars. I really don't have anything to say about it. This is Sir Thomas More describing a seemingly perfect society called Utopia. This is actually where the word utopia comes from, which is interesting, and I thought this book was fine. The utopian society was different than what I thought it was going to be, but I really don't have that many feelings about this. It was fine. It was kind of interesting. I wouldn't read it again. Would I recommend it? If you're particularly interested in it, then I guess check it out. But for me, it was just fine. And that's all really there is to say. Next, after I filmed that thriller video, I was in the mood to read more thrillers. So these last 2 books that I'm going to talk about are thrillers that I checked out from the library, and I read each one of them in about 2 days. First, Someone We Know by Shari Lapena. I gave this 3 stars. I read another Shari Lapena book this year, the glare on the book, called A Stranger in the House, and I really did not like that one. I liked this one slightly better. I gave it 3 stars. I liked it much more than the other book by her I read, but I still felt like it was just an average run-of-the-mill thriller. Someone We Know follows this quiet community in New York, and this mom, Olivia, finds out that her teenage son broke into some neighborhood houses, and one of the houses is also the location where a murder occurred. A local woman is found dead, and so everyone in the community is wondering who killed her, and is it someone they know? And naturally, Olivia, our mom, is really worried because if people find out that her son broke into this house where the dead woman lived, they might think that he killed her. So that's a problem. We follow multiple different characters in this book. I don't remember all of their names at this point. I think the story was good. It was not the most memorable. The characters were not the most memorable, but I didn't hate any of them either, so I guess that's good. And I did predict what was going to happen in the end. It was not very obvious, I think. I could see how some people would be surprised. It was... Without spoiling anything, I'll say that I figured out the ending because there was a plot thread in this book that was mentioned and seemingly did not at all connect to the main events of this book, to the murder. And I figure Shari Lapena wasn't bringing up this plot thread just cuz. I figured that it was gonna have to be relevant later on, and I was right. So overall, I enjoyed this, but it was just okay. It was not very memorable. It's a lot like many other thrillers that I have read and probably will read in the future. Finally, we're at the end of this video. 9 books is so many. And the last book that I read in October was The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. I ended up giving this 4 stars. Overall, I really enjoyed it. Family Upstairs is a thriller. Our main character, Libby, just turned 25, and on her birthday she receives a letter from a solicitor telling her that she has inherited this very expensive house in the Chelsea neighborhood of London. Libby was adopted, and so she finds out that her biological family lived in this house, and they were found dead there in what seems to have been a suicide pact. Though, was it really? We also follow 2 other characters. Lucy, who is a single mom and a street performer in France. She plays the fiddle to make money to support her kids, and she evidently is connected to Libby in some way, though that is not made clear at the beginning. And then we also follow Henry, who was the son of the people who lived in this house that Libby in the future is now inheriting, and he is telling us about his childhood and how his life fell apart after these people moved in with them, and everything comes together in the end. Did I think the resolution to this book was very surprising? No. I figured out what was going on before it was revealed. However, I still really enjoyed this book because I loved the writing and the atmosphere. There were some things along the way that were surprising to me, and I didn't necessarily know everything from the beginning. It was more so I was putting more and more pieces of the puzzle together as the book went on. Even though I was not super surprised, I still thought this was a really fun, atmospheric book. There was a small reveal in this book that did really catch me off guard, and I really liked the ending of this book and where it left off. So while this was not the best thriller I've ever read or the most shocking, it was a lot of fun and it was a quick read for me that kept me turning the pages. So these are the books that I read in the month of October. I read so many books this month. I am way ahead my yearly reading goal on Goodreads. I wanted to read 42 books. Now I'm at 53. Never thought this would happen, but you know, here we are. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I read this month, and if so, what did you think of them? I would especially love to hear from people who read Lock Every Door and loved it, because I genuinely want to hear some other people's opinions. Maybe I can then see this book in a different light, because personally I just hated the ending and I want to know why other people liked it. I'm not trying to be patronizing. I genuinely want to know. So if you out there read the book and loved it, leave me a comment. I would really like to hear from you. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every single Wednesday. My social media links are down below if you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a stellar rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you in the next video.